Israeli tanks and ground troops continued their push into the Gaza Strip today, moving closer to the city of Gaza with its dense urban environment and intricate underground tunnel system. As the Israeli military confronts Hamas, Republicans in Congress have made a $14.3 billion military aid package to Israel a top priority. President Biden and the Democrats are seeking to connect this military aid to more than $60 billion in additional funding for Ukraine. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Rich McCormick. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Georgia. Congressman McCormick, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
So you serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Tell us the latest you're hearing from Israel.
So I'll tell you what I hear outside the Foreign Affairs. None of this is a secret, but I know for a fact this is going to be brutal urban warfare. Anybody who's been in the military and seen what we had to do in Fallujah and what we've done all across the small towns of Iraq understands how dangerous this business is. There's going to be some good people that die on both sides. And when I say good people on the Palestinian side, I'm talking about innocent civilians who just got caught up in this. Hamas are bad people, evil people who have guns, who have forced this issue, who have literally gone and killed babies and raped women. And now the Palestinian people will be used as human shields for this evil regime. Let's face it, the Israelis use their weaponry to protect their children. Hamas uses children to protect their military machine. If everybody in Gaza laid down their arms, there would be peace. If everybody in Israel laid down their arms, there would be no more Israel. They'd be annihilated. Going room to room, house to house is going to cost some very specialized people who are highly trained and very patriotic their lives. That's just a fact. There's no getting, and it doesn't matter how well trained you are. They are multi-layered defenses. These guys are well trained, much better trained than in the past. It is going to be difficult terrain, but I know that it's very necessary to root out Hamas down to the last person. My biggest concern is that they'll melt away as they start to lose considerable ground, and they'll just disappear into civilian populace and live to fight another day. I hope they fight and stay to the last man and be brave as we give their souls back to Allah to be sorted out, because they need to be ended.
Congressman, you're a Marine veteran, and you understand, as you mentioned, the urban combat. This is one of the most densely populated areas, one of the top areas in the world, because it's a pretty small strip of land, a lot of people there, and it is going to be a hard-fought battle as Israel moves in there. What are you concerned, or are you concerned about the international community? We're already hearing calls from even some of our own people here in the United States for ceasefires. That's not going to eliminate the threat that Israel is facing from Hamas.
Well, first of all, anytime you talk about sovereignty of a nation, they have some really hard choices to make. But we saw this coming from day one, when not one bullet had been fired by Israel, and yet they knew they were going to have to go in and take out Hamas. Imagine, if you will, America having another 9/11, and then everybody said, hey, let's just sue for peace, please. We got to have peace. That's an impossible scenario. Otherwise, you're just a sitting duck for evil people. That's not realistic. But we knew this was going to be used against Israel from the get-go. We predicted it. Of course it is. We've seen an unprecedented amount of anti-Israel, anti-Semitic behavior here in America, which I never thought I'd witness in my lifetime, especially just a couple days after you saw the egregious, the pure evil behavior of Hamas, beheading babies, raping women, taking hostages of innocents, and then seeing people protest Israel. How baffling is that? This was a setup from the beginning. This is well orchestrated. It was meant to demonize Israel, even though they had pulled out of Gaza long, long ago, had no influence on that region as far as military or civilian populace. It was absolutely aggression from Hamas, meant to start another religious war, right. Not just from their front, but from Lebanon, from Syria, from all over that region, and is all backed by Iran.
Yeah, and that needs to be repeated often. People don't realize in 2005, Israel turned that over to the Palestinians, and in 2007, they elected Hamas as their government. So it is. You're absolutely right. This is all Hamas. They own it. Let's talk about the response. Speaker Johnson, House Republicans have made military support for Israel a top priority. Have already passed a resolution last week standing with Israel. This week, funding for Israel. It is separated from the Biden administration's priorities of another 60+ billion going to Ukraine. Is that going to pass the House?
I think so. I think it'll pass overwhelmingly. We know that they need it. Most of it's military aid. I think over 10 billion of it is military aid. The rest of it's made up of state and some emergency funds. I'm not really sure why they need 50 million for emergency evacuation of Americans. I started doing the math. If it costs $5,000 per person, you're talking about 100,000 people. I know most of the people who wanted to leave have already left. So I'm a little bit suspicious about just throwing money at a problem. But the vast majority of this is going to go to military aid, which they need, and which is going to be required in order to finish their mission.
But it's also an offset because this $13+ billion is going to come from the additional money that went to the IRS last year in the Inflation Reduction Act.
You know, we've talked about this in several other bills that we passed that have not been signed into law. So we're attacking the IRS in multiple ways of them expanding. The problem is that usually, well, actually never, has emergency funds have to be offset. I mean, that's why there are emergency funds being used. And if this starts becoming the new precedent, I think it's going to be a dangerous one. You're either doing the right thing or not. I think we need to save as much money as possible in the federal budget. Regardless, this is a leverage point that we're using to defund the IRS. The CBO is going to give this a negative rating most likely because they're going to say, now you're going to collect less tax income. So you can see that partisan argument already starting to form, which I hate. This should be about one thing, which is funding the right thing to get done. I think we need to save every penny we can into the future. I think the IRS having 87,000 more agents is a problem in and of itself. And I know why we're leveraging this, but I'm not sure it's the right fight to pick when we start talking about emergency funding being tied to things like this.
Do you foresee any Democrat support for this funding for Israel?
Absolutely. I think they get it. This is a bipartisan effort. I don't think that funding the support of Israel is a partisan thing by and large. You will have some people, maybe even on both sides. One person says this is not a war we should be involved in on one side, and the other side says, oh, we need to be fair and balanced. You know, this is, you know, your Talibs and your Ilhans. I can understand why they wouldn't be for it, but I think the vast majority of Democrats as well as Republicans will be in support of Israel, and I don't think this will have a hard time passing.
What happens when this comes back from the Senate once again combined with Ukraine?
That'll be interesting to see. I have not been in this scenario before. Remember, 70% of Congress is new in the last 6 years. So I wait patiently to see how this plays out. The reconciliation process is not clear for me in budgeting, especially in emergency budgeting. So I have some things to learn, and I think a lot of congressmen do.
Well, I've been here about 20 years. There's a lot of new things right now that I think will be hard to predict. You've got conservative members of Congress who are pro-military, pro-national security, but also fiscally responsible. You've got new leadership. So it will be very interesting to see how this plays out. Congressman McCormick, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.